The terrorist attack on England. Siener van Rensburg foresaw a time when England would suffer a devastating internal attack, a form of terror from within rather than through a conventional war. He saw England engulfed in fire, with flames rising suddenly and unexpectedly. The destruction came not from an external invasion, but from a betrayal that emerged from inside the country. It was a symbolic judgment on a once great nation, and he associated the fire with mourning and national humiliation. Siener described great shock and sorrow, implying widespread casualties or devastation. This attack was not seen as part of a declared war, but as a sudden, treacherous act, catching the English completely off guard. Infiltration, betrayal, and judgment from within. The prophet emphasized that England's suffering would not come from visible armies, but from infiltration and inner betrayal. He saw a time when the stranger within would rise high, displacing the native authority, a direct prophetic echo of Deuteronomy 28:43. This act of terror would not be merely political or military. It symbolized a divine chastisement. England would be punished for abandoning her Christian roots, embracing moral relativism and secular ideologies. The betrayal was both spiritual and national, a sign that the nation's foundation had already been undermined before the terror struck. The role of Islam and the strangers among them. Van Rensburg spoke of a foreign spiritual influence rising within Western nations, particularly in England, which he linked with the Islamic faith. He did not use modern political terms, but described this influence as growing quietly, then suddenly asserting itself with violent consequences. He saw the spiritual decline of the English people as enabling this rise, allowing those who did not share the nation's Christian heritage to gain influence and eventually strike with destructive force. The growing presence of this foreign spiritual force was not immediately perceived as a threat, but Siener saw it become the source of violent upheaval and terror. Fire, smoke, and national mourning. The vision of fire in England was vivid and repeated in different contexts. Siener described thick smoke rising from English cities, a sign of destruction and chaos. He connected these images with great mourning among the people, who were left shocked and confused. The fire was symbolic of both physical destruction, likely from the terror attack, and the burning away of false pride and former glory. The mourning was not only for lives lost, but for a nation's identity shattered. This fire was both literal and spiritual, serving as a purifying judgment. England's fall from grace. Siener van Rensburg saw England as once favored but later spiritually desolate. The nation that once sent missionaries across the globe had now become a warning to others. He did not name Islam in every instance, but he spoke of foreigners who had no part in the Christian covenant rising in power, eventually turning on the nation that hosted them. He implied that England's fall was not just geopolitical, but a collapse of faith, culture, and spiritual authority. The terror attack was the culmination of a long moral decline, a final wake-up call before destruction. The divine warning and the possibility of repentance. Though the visions were dire, Siener did not portray them as devoid of hope. He suggested that the terror and destruction could spark repentance. If the English people would turn back to Christ, a remnant might be preserved. He saw in these calamities a call to national and personal repentance, a last opportunity for a return to the foundations of faith. The fire was not only a punishment but also a potential purging, one that could refine and awaken the faithful if they heeded the warning.